He's married to Rebecca, who is working as well this evening. And they've been married for 14 years, and they do have two adorable children, Turner and Merritt. And we got to already meet Merritt, so I hope she's still in the background. And with that, I am going to stop my sharing and let Forrest take over.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And it is such a joy to be with you all tonight. Merritt is not with us at the moment. I bribed her with some sweets if she went downstairs. And so I have no idea where that is going to lead. But the good thing is Becca will be home around 7:45. And I'll be on this call till after that. So Becca's going to have to deal with the ramifications of my bribery. And so we'll just see how that all goes here in a little bit. But I am excited to be with you tonight. However, like, I'll just be upfront. I pale in comparison to the Holdernesses. Such big fans of theirs. So you're going to get, just a little bit of stuff tonight, but yeah, sorry, you're going to be disappointed by me in comparison to them. But I'd rather go ahead of them than have to follow them. So I guess that's a good thing. So again, for those, I think I've met most of the folks, although I have not seen many of you in 2 years. And so that's why, even if it's through a screen, it's just really good to see folks. With Merritt being 3, she's not yet eligible for a vaccine. And with my wife working in the ICU, we've just been careful through all of this for a lot of the right reasons. And so we haven't quite had the opportunity to get Merritt kind of fully plugged back into the church programming, although we're there now as we're starting to get some of those church hour options available for her. So we do hope to begin returning this weekend. So we do hope to see some of you in person. And she's already screaming. And to see some of you in person, but to continue to see many of you virtually as well. It's Murphy's Law. It's Murphy's Law.
And if you need to go to her, feel free, okay? It is okay. Many of us have been there before, right?
And we can just keep telling WA stories. I mean,
I know, right?
That could be our filler.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we get it.
Okay, I apologize for that. I think we have got them redirected momentarily. So I'll go fast before she comes back up again. I love seeing all these why stories in the chat. And so as was shared previously, so yeah, so I do work with the YMCA of the Triangle. I'm going to go over that in detail here in just a minute when I share my screen. But quick recap, I've been with the Y for 27 years. So I'm a lifer, I'm a company guy. Either that or I just can't find anything else that I'm good at. So I'm not sure which one it is, but both work. I started when I was 16 as a summer camp counselor at Camp Canada. My first facility related job was when I was 18 with the downtown Durham YMCA. I was a student at UNC and I worked there as a lifeguard. And since then, I've done just about every job that we employ, with the exception of our wellness department, because I'm not super fit, so I don't really know all that stuff. But it's good that we've got great people that work with us that do know that. So early in my career, again, I got my start in youth programming with summer camp. And part of what I have learned is that really at the end of the day, what I love is investing in other people. And helping them grow into the best version of themselves. And when I was 16 years old, I really enjoyed doing that with 6- and 7-year-olds. So I loved working with the littlest kids. And then as I got a little bit older, I enjoyed working with the 10- and 11-year-olds. And then as a young adult, I really enjoyed working with college students and our teenage staff and volunteers. And now as a medium young adult, I enjoy working with our adult staff and our professional staff and helping them grow through their careers. And that's been the consistent thread for me, is just that continuity of being able to invest in people. And I think that for me, the why has been a calling. I think I didn't necessarily always know that that's what I wanted to do as a profession, but it's where God led me. And while I think the work that we do in the church is incredibly important, I think everybody has an opportunity to serve, and everybody has an opportunity to be a witness. And so I found the Y is the place where I feel like I'm able to do that at my best. And so, yeah, so 27 years with the Y, and currently serving as a regional vice president. And so, yeah, I spend probably more time in my car these days than anywhere else. But I do work with our operations in Durham County, Orange County, Chatham County, and then the northern part of Wake County. So for those of you that were saying things about Hope Valley Farms and the North Raleigh Y, which you're probably referring to the Findlay Y, and then Lakewood and Hope, all the places, Camp Ganada. So those are all places I work with. So if you're enjoying your experience, I'm glad. And if you're not, it's not my fault, and I will find somebody else to blame. But I truly do love the work that I do at the Y. And one of the great things with the territory, the region that I have, as you might imagine, for those of you that have been around the Triangle for a long time, the variety of communities and the differences in those communities, ranging from Chatham County and Siler City to Durham to Chapel Hill to Wake Forest to North Raleigh, there's just a tremendous amount of variety with that. And so every day for me truly is different and unique. And I think that that's one of the things that I love about it. So with that being said, if I could, I am going to begin sharing my screen, and I'm going to hope that the technology keeps pace with me. Worst case scenario, for some reason the computer just shuts down. I've got my phone. I'm ready to dial in on my phone if I have to, but we'll see how this all goes. And I share sound, share screen, and I think we're sharing now. Is that right? Okay, I'm seeing some head nods. So I've already covered a little bit about myself. Can I get a thumbs up? You can see the slides. We're good. Okay, great. So I've already shared a little bit about myself. And again, the Y as an organization really is, it's a global movement. The Y is in just about every country in the world at the moment. It started in 1844 in London, England. For those of you that are familiar with the Y, you know that YMCA stands for Young Men's Christian Association. And at one point, that is what the Y was representative of, young men that were Christian. It was originally started as a Bible study by George Williams, who was the founder in London, England. We are no longer all young, we are no longer all men, and we are no longer all Christian. And I think that we, like a lot of faith organizations, have over our existence really grappled with what does it mean to be a Christian organization, but also be an inclusive and welcoming organization, and where do you strike that balance? And so part of the way I reconcile that is, and I tell our staff, we can definitively be a Christian organization without being an organization of only Christians, right? So we have non-believers, we have people of different faith, and really at the Y, we just try to show up and love on our people, our staff, our members, our participants, and then and hope that brings them a little bit closer to God and through that journey. But the Y started as a global initiative in 1844. It moved across the Atlantic in 1851 and landed in Boston. That was the first YMCA. It made its way to the Triangle by 1857, and it had found its way to Durham by 1888. And actually the first facility, the first YMCA facility in Durham, was founded in 1908. It's on Main Street in Roxborough, so the corner of Main and Roxborough. It is what is now the former Health and Human Services building. So a building is still there, and the exterior of the building still looks like it looked when the Y was first built, although it's been torn down and rebuilt and repurposed. But the Y has been around for a long time. But again, making its way to the Triangle area in the 1850s. The Y grew throughout the United States in two key ways. One was, like many things, through the growth of the railroads. So you would see YMCAs along railroad towns and stops as our country grew. And then also it grew through the growth of colleges. So the campus YMCA movement at one point was a huge thing in our country and really a catalyst for the Y's growth. There were almost 800 different YMCA, campus YMCA programs across the country at one point. That number is now greatly diminished because campus YMCAs, as branch YMCAs began to open and form, they began to take some of that responsibility and became less important for campus YMCAs. You may be familiar that there is a Campus Y at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. However, it is not affiliated with the YMCA. They were part of our organization at one point, but then in the 60s, they split off and have just kind of operated as a separate organization. Wonderful organization. Our YMCA has great partnerships with them, but that is a little bit of a looking back to how the Y spread across the nation. One of the things that we recognize as an organization is that for some people, a lot of people only know the Y as what we refer to as a swim and gym, a place you go to swim and a place you go to play basketball and work out. But the Y is so much more than that. And so want to take just a minute, and I'm going to play this video in the hopes that the sound works, because we tested it about 20 times. But just to give you a little bit of a perspective of what the Y is like from a national presence. If you will, when I start playing it, if you'll give me a thumbs up that you can just hear it, that'd be great.
When you are part of the Y family, you are part of something big.
Something that matters.
We are more than programs and services.
More than brick and mortar.
We're people.
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 Diverse and inclusive.
Compassionate.
Proud.
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 United and inspired.
We are in this together.
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 Making an impact.
Committed to youth development.
Healthy living.
And social responsibility. Committed to America.
We are 2,600 Ys, coast to coast.
10,000 communities.
830,000 staff and volunteers.
Serving 21 million people.
But we're all one Y.
One Y.
One Y.
One mission.
One movement.
One shared promise.
To change the world.
One life at a time.
We are one Y. We are one Y.
We are one Y.
We are one Y.
We are one Y.
We are one Y.
So part of that is, we are one Y right now. I'm not sure that we could always have said that about ourselves as an organization. The YMCA is a federated organization, which probably the easiest way to explain that is it's kind of the nonprofit version of a franchise, right? So we kind of operate underneath one national umbrella, but we all operate as independent 501c3s. And so the YMCA of the Triangle, which I'll talk a little bit about here in a moment, is an independent 501c3. There's about 800 of those across the country with multiple branches, again, about 2,600 branch locations. And prior to about a decade ago, there was a lot less consistency in who we were as an organization. And we would say, like you'd say in a lot of places, that if you'd been to one Y, you'd been to one Y. And there's some of that that's still true today, but we've gotten much more consistent in our branding and our imaging and our messaging, and quite honestly, in our commitment to the mission. We had some national rebranding that was done and some national work that was done to bring some of our facilities across the country into line with their commitment to our mission and who we are as an organization. Some Ys had started out with good intention and then had kind of fallen off the rails. So we have an annual process to kind of recertify that. But we are very much one Y today. And that has a lot of benefits to our members and to the communities. We're able to leverage our voice in a national and state level, local level. We have had a lot of exercise of our legislative and advocacy muscles over the past couple of years with the pandemic and the work that we've done in and around the pandemic. So being kind of a united and solidified organization has been pretty beneficial to us. I don't want to do that. I want to go to the next slide. Kind of zooming in a little bit, here as the YMCA of the Triangle, again, we are an independent 501c3 here at the YMCA. We have approximately 22 different locations. That includes our full facilities like our downtown Durham YMCA. That includes our overnight camps like Camp Canada. Then we have some storefront and program offices, but 22 locations throughout the Triangle. We have a 7-county service area, and that is Durham County, Orange, and Chatham, Wake, Lee, and Johnston counties. And then we also serve Pamlico County down on the coast. We have 2 overnight camps there, as well as programs throughout the community. Some stats that I'd like to show you, and I know the importance of zooming in on this. I'll make that a little bit bigger for all of us. But our why, and this is on this side of the pandemic. So I will tell you, we were a bigger organization prior to the pandemic. But currently we serve nearly 200,000 individuals. About 114,000 of them are members. So we have members that, you know, they pay their membership and they're signed up for our programs. But then we also have folks that are not, you know, members of the Y, but are still engaged in our programs. We serve about 73,000 youth across that 7-county service area. We have about 30,000 employees. That our highest season is during the summer, when all of our camps are, when everything's open. That's our busiest season. And then we engage about 4,000 volunteers annually. The YMCA of the Triangle, we're currently a $65 million organization. Prior to the pandemic, we were about a $94 million organization. So, you know, you do the math real quick. We took about a $30 million revenue hit during the pandemic. So pretty significant for us. And we run an annual campaign. So our annual fundraising campaign, which Westminster's been engaged in with the Y Learning program in different pieces through the years, collectively as the YMCA of the Triangle, it's about a $13.5 million annual campaign. We're one of the largest Ys in the country. And so that's given us, and some of that is we've got great leadership and great staff. The other thing, and we'll very readily say this, we are just located in a tremendously wonderful area. You know, the Triangle and the growth rate in the Triangle has sustained our YMCA well, and continues to do so as we move forward. Now, if I can get to that little button again. There we go. And there will be plenty of time at the end for question and answer. So I know I'm kind of going fast, but I want to cover some of this and then I want to stop and kind of unpack this with you. As we think about our areas of impact, you may have heard this in the video on the national video, but there's kind of 3 main areas of focus for the Y. That's youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. Again, a lot of people, when they think of the Y, they think of us as a swim and gym. Some people may be aware of the camps, and some people may say like, yeah, I learned to swim at the Y. But the variety and scope of programs, and again, this will be recorded so you can have this, and I'll send you the PowerPoint presentation so you can actually open this up as big as you need for viewing. But whether it's running team programs or after school tutorial programs, aquatic safety programs. We also run a bank of evidence-based programs, cancer survivor programs, Live Strong at the Y, diabetes prevention program, which is a CDC evidence-based program, Moving for Better Balance, which is a falls prevention program for seniors. We have our overnight camps, we have our day camps, we have after school programs, we have before school programs. So the plethora of what we do, the totality of that is much bigger than what happens within the 4 walls of the YMCA. And so we're blessed to be in the position we are to serve our community in this way, and excited to continue to grow alongside the Triangle and truly seek to meet the needs of the community that we serve. Sorry, to get to that one. One of the things that, and this is where I'll begin kind of intersecting this with me a little bit, if that's okay. But for those of you that are active Y members, you know that our mission, we have a Christian mission, and it's to put Christian principles into practice through programs that build healthy spirit, mind, and body for all. And that's always been the mission of the YMCA. And it's been the mission of our Y. If you move about the country a little bit, you may hear of some Ys being big C Ys and some Ys being little C Ys, meaning how important is the Christian mission to the work they do. We've historically been referred to as a big CY. I think our faith is embedded into the work we do. The statement there below the mission statement is a little bit of how we have navigated and sought to expand our reach, and to quite candidly continue to grow into a more inclusive organization. And so we recognize that we have people that are strong in their Christian faith and that are growing in that, and that the Y is a great place for that. We also understand that there are folks from a variety of backgrounds that choose to engage with us at the Y, and we want them to feel welcome as well. And so, you know, for me, I think it's important for, if I'm going to spend a lot of my day working, I want to do work that I believe in, and I want to do work that moves me and that I think has the opportunity to move others. And so at a young age, as a 16-year-old counselor, that's when the mission of the Y really spoke to me. And quite candidly, I am in many ways today the person I am because of the Y and because of the formative experiences that I've had. I met my wife at the Y. My kids are growing up in the Y. Everything, the very little I know about parenting, but everything I know about parenting, I learned from being a summer camp counselor. So I think I have a great deal of debt to the Y, and hopefully I'm repaying just a small portion of that. Beyond our mission, again, our values, how we kind of show up as an organization, caring, honesty, respect, responsibility, faith in God, and then our personality, being welcoming and genuine and nurturing and hopeful and determined. And some of this stuff is more internal language, but the way I like to think about all of this is the Y is not a place to work if you're cranky and angry at the world all the time. Like, it's just not going to work well for you. We all have bad days. My wife, she's a nurse, and you know, my understanding is there's can be much more terse and mean language used in the hospital than what we allow at our YMCA programs. And I think that just goes well with my personality. I try to be a very positive and upbeat person. I like being around other positive and upbeat people, and we tend to find that at the Y. I will tell you that through the past 2 years of the pandemic, we have seen the best of some people, and we have seen the worst of some people. And so, but we've tried to walk with all of them through the past 2 years to the best of our ability, and as we've all kind of tried to grapple with how this impacts our daily lives. And so, but I think the Y as an organization is a place that I feel really good about showing up to every day. And whether in a given week I give 40, 50, 60, or maybe a few more hours, depending on the week, I'm really, it truly is a calling and a vocation, and it doesn't really feel too much like work on most days. Some days it feels a lot like work, but some days not so much. I just wanted to highlight this a little bit to get a little bit more Durham specific. So the Durham YMCAs, we have 4 facility branches in Durham. And prior to 2001, 2002, Durham was actually a separate 501c3. So the YMCA of the Triangle is really the combination and the marriage of the Raleigh Y, the Durham Y, and the Chapel Hill Carrboro YMCA. So all 3 of them used to be independent. In 2001, Durham and Raleigh merged to form the YMCA of the Triangle, and then in 2013, Chapel Hill merged with the YMCA of the Triangle to join the fold. But within Durham, we have 4 facility branches. We serve about 6,300 members, about 3,000 youth participants, an annual budget of about $5 million. And last year, the annual campaign, this number is 1 year past dated on that, But last year we raised about $925,000 in the annual campaign, and 100% of that money goes back into the community. So whether it's helping to fund the Y Learning program at Westminster or any of the other locations we're running, or if it happens to fund our Livestrong programs or our membership financial assistance. Right now we have about 18% of our members at the Downtown Durham Y are on some sort of financial assistance. And that's about twice the rate of our branches across the association. And that just speaks to the need in Durham, but it also speaks to the community's commitment to support that. We don't want finances to be a barrier to anyone's engagement with the Y. And the annual campaign is a really big piece to helping to ensure that that does not become a barrier. I wasn't going to mention this, but since Chris mentioned it in his email today, and you can let him know that I do read the emails because I saw this in there, you may have caught wind over the past week or so. We have finally been able to go public with a revitalization of our downtown space. Currently, our downtown space is about 25 years old. Again, I worked there the very first day the pool was in operation. And I can tell you that today our boiler is not working very well at the Downtown Y to keep the water warm for those of you that are lap swimmers. So prior to the pandemic, we began conversations with developers in how we might look at the next 30 to 50 years of that space. We got really far along. We were ready to sign a development agreement in early 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And quite candidly, there was probably a period where, like many employers and like many people, we didn't know if the Y would survive through the pandemic. We thought we might have to just sell our space outright just to keep the doors open. But we got through that and are in this stage of things now. And so we continue to push forward on the conversations around the development. And just this past week, we went public with that, with the news, with a press release. We are partnering with East West Developers, which they are a national developer, but they've done some great work locally. They've done the Meadowmont community. They were the developers behind Woodcroft. They've done a lot of projects here regionally. And so we're partnering with them to bring a mixed use development to our current site. It's hard to tell from this picture, but it will be roughly a 27-story tall residential tower, which for those of you that are familiar with downtown Durham, that's comparable to One City Center. We're below grade from them. So when it's all said and done, the tops of the building, like there's this kind of competition of who's going to be taller nowadays. And so I'm not sure where that'll top out at, but and then, so that's the building in the background on the left. The building in the foreground on the right, that's going to be an 11-story office tower. And then the bottom, the kind of the piece that wraps all the way around, that'll be the YMCA, and it'll essentially be 2.5 stories. Just to quickly walk you through this, again, only because Chris put it in his email, I was not going to do that. But we'll have an aquatic center. This is not the scale. We're still working on early design phases, but we'll have 2 pools just like we do now. We'll have locker rooms on the bottom level. We'll have a street level lobby that people can access from the street as well as from the structured parking deck. So we don't have really good parking downtown right now. That'll be fixed with a parking deck that'll go there. We'll have ample space for full court basketball, gymnasium, workout facilities, all of the amenities that we currently have, and then some. One of the things about this facility is certainly downtown is growing very rapidly. Durham is growing very rapidly. And this will position us well and strengthen our financial position as we move forward from an internal operating perspective. But part of what that allows us to do is it allows us organizationally to invest more of our resources in our philanthropically and community supported programs. So the programs that aren't funded by membership fees or by registration fees, having this facility done in this way will allow us to better serve the community. We anticipate closing down later this summer, late summer, early fall. For those of you that swim, don't panic and don't email me tonight. We're working on plans. But once we close, we anticipate that it'll take about 2 years for us to get the YMCA rebuilt. And I can't wait until that is done. In the interim, we'll better utilize our existing facilities. We're also looking at some interim space that we'll be able to lease in the meantime. But really excited to share that with you. And again, so you may have caught wind of that through the media recently. but we've been working on that for many years. Last thing I want to show you before I kind of pause, maybe I'll share a little bit of a personal narrative after this, but I do want to give you a little bit of a glimpse. One of the things that I was asked to speak about tonight is our Why Learning program. And many of you know that program is being hosted at Westminster, and such an amazing opportunity for us to be there. And on behalf of the Why, I am so grateful that Westminster has found that space to be a space in the new fellowship hall and their own campus to be a space that could serve the community in this way. And I'm thankful that the Y can be an implementer in that work and to connect with the families and the children that live around us. But it truly has been excited to see that get off the ground. We started slow. Our goal for this year was to reach 25 participants. We got to that goal a little bit later than we had hoped. Quite candidly, the schools are just overwhelmed right now, and we really rely on the administrators to help us connect with the families and the students that could most benefit from our programs. And when principals are teaching classes or cleaning up the cafeteria because they don't have enough staff, this kind of falls to the side a little bit. But we've gotten to our 25 that we wanted to get to for this year. We have lots of capacity to grow. There's lots of need and lots of opportunity, but we're really excited about where we are right now. But I also understand that many of you may not have as much of a familiarity with what the program is and what it really looks like on a day-to-day basis, just because of COVID, and we've not really been able to engage a lot of folks in that. So I just want to show you a brief video that kind of highlights a little bit of what goes on and some of the impact of our program there with Why Learning. You'll notice, because people aren't wearing masks, that this video was taken before the pandemic. It is funny to see kids running around without masks these days, but it also gives me hope as to what we'll hopefully see in the coming months when the time is right. So just a brief video for you.
The Y has given me so many opportunities in life, and I just want to be able to give it back to them by giving my time to them to help out.
Y Learning is an after-school tutorial program. We work closely with the principal and the teachers to identify the kids that need to be in the program.
We pick kind of the students who are the bubble students, who can just reach that grade level. The students are coming into the classroom knowing less because we're requiring a lot more. With Y Learning, they're able to see a teacher or a counselor working on skills every single day. So we are pushing them to be that college and career ready. Not only does it help with education, but it's kind of building these students up with confidence, so they're able to go into the classroom and feel more confident in their learning.
I met Robert through the Y Learning program at the middle school.
Y Learning was fun. It was fun. I got my grades right and everything in middle school. The counselors there, they impacted my life a lot because I was shy. I didn't really want to talk to anyone other than the people that I knew, but slowly they started getting me to come out of my shell.
It's always nice to see the students come back to the Y later on in life. For example, Robert, who's come full circle, he started with Y.
Kids every day, build even better relationships, have fun with them, because you never know what could be going on at home with them. So maybe they're always going to look up to you as a role model instead of like their family members and stuff. They started looking up to me. They started building bonds with me a lot.
Robert is on the go. There's no sitting around, there's no dragging, there's no I'm tired. He wants to go further in the Y. He wants to make the Y a career.
It makes me happy because I see the kids all the time. I see the smiles on their face whenever we're playing an activity, and that's honestly all I really want to see, is have a bond with them and see them smile and have fun.
Not only are we tutoring them, we are here to build relationships with the kids.
It takes a village to raise a child, and Y Learning really helps with that. It is a free program for these parents thanks to donations from community. Without these funds, these students wouldn't be able to have these type of resources. These students would be struggling. They would fall farther behind.
That's how it was for me. My life was good, but with the YMCA it became a whole lot better. It would change their kids' lives a lot, because it changed mine a lot as well. makes us feel like we're doing something, like we're having an impact on the community and the kids that are around us. I've been wanting to have the same impact that they had on me on the younger kids, so they have an impact when they're growing up on younger kids. So that way it keeps going for the generations to come.
This is us.
This is us.
This is us.
So again, just to kind of highlight, I think that as conditions continue to evolve with the pandemic, and as you have an opportunity and others at Westminster have an opportunity to see the Y Learning program firsthand, I think it truly, for me, is the church walking the walk. It is, you know, it is the congregation coming together to help fund, to help sponsor, to help provide space. And then ultimately, as we're able to continue to grow the program, to allow people to volunteer with the students and to connect with them and build relationships. For me, that's what church and community is about. And so I'm just, you know, I find myself in a unique position. I had to do a lot of disclosure through this process of, you know, letting the Y people know that Westminster was my church and letting Westminster know that the Y was my job. And I had to remove myself from a lot of decisions. But, you know, I truly do feel like I'm in a really unique position to see this from both sides. And it makes me incredibly proud as a member of Westminster, and it makes me incredibly humbled as a staff member at the Y. So truly thankful for Westminster's support with that. I am going to kind of round out my narrative by stopping sharing my screen if I can. And I just want to share kind of a little bit of kind of that faith and profession intersection with you. And then I'll take whatever questions I'm allowed to for however long. Again, anytime. The kids are quiet, which is either really good or really bad. I'm not sure, and I'm scared to find out. I grew up in a Methodist church in Nash County. My mom still lives in the house I was born in. We went to a little Methodist church, Mount Pleasant United Methodist Church. The building is still there. Sadly, the congregation is slowly fading away, like a lot of small rural churches. But I grew up in a Methodist church, and I grew up in a strong Christian household. We went to church every Sunday. My dad, he was the guy that went in early to turn on the heat in the winter and the AC in the summer, because you couldn't run it all the time because the church wasn't used all the time and we couldn't afford it. And but I spent a lot of time at church, and my dad was treasurer and he was involved in committees and all the stuff. And so I grew up with church being foundational to who I was as a person. And I think in many ways, it was church that led me to the Y. I think it was my upbringing and then my early connection with the mission of the Y that aligned well with who I was as a person. But like many youth and teens and young adults, I found myself maybe drifting away from the church, and in some ways feeling as though I was drifting away from God, although I know he was not any further away from me. And that probably started in my late teens when I was old enough to get a job and have a car, and started working some weekends and started not going to church as often, and then got to college and got confused with college and all the stuff that goes on there, and just didn't have a strong community around me. And quite honestly, I kind of fell out of sync with the church at some point. Not that I ever became a non-believer, but because I just wasn't actively engaged in it. And some of you know this about me, but some of you don't. Again, I'm a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. However, when people say, what year did you graduate? I like to tell them what year I started, because I started in 1996, but I didn't graduate until 2007. So you do the math real quick, that's a 10-year journey through college. And that was for a bachelor's, that was just for one degree. And so I took some time in the middle of college to try to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, because I was pretty perplexed about that. And during that time, I actually had my first full-time job with the YMCA. It was actually the YMCA of Greater Indianapolis. And I was there for 3 years, working at a summer camp as a program director, and it was my first full-time job. And I happened to work for someone who he and his wife took me in. I lived at camp. I lived on a meager salary, a lot of ramen noodles, all that stuff. But on the weekends, they'd invite me over for dinner, and then they'd invite me to church. And then I'd randomly see some book, Stephen Covey or Max Lucado or whoever it might be, just kind of laying around, and started reading a little bit. And then I can say that it was where I was living at the camp in Indiana. It was the middle of winter, and I was living by myself. I mean, there's nobody, and there's like 3 feet of snow on 150 acres, and I'm out there by myself and just reading. And what was happening was I was actually growing much closer to God in that moment, because I didn't have anybody else to really be close to. And so I found that during that time I was able to grow much closer to God, and through that process actually gained clarity on what I wanted to do with my life. Moved back to North Carolina so that I could go back and finish school. I finished with no problems, and then started working for the Y immediately. So in many ways, I like to say that church led me to God, and church led me to the Y, but then the Y led me back to God and back to Christ. And so not that there was never a separation agreement between the two of us, or the four of us, as it might be, but instead that the distance between us changed, and the Y was very influential in that, and the church has been very influential in that. So I've probably rambled more than I am allowed to, trying to keep an eye on time, and so I've talked a lot. So now's a good chance for me to pause, because you're probably already tired of hearing me talk. And let me see what questions or what direction you'd like for me to go with next thoughts, but I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Forrest, I really appreciate all of your sharing about the why, but also your own personal story. And I think that is a powerful example of how God makes use of organizations, of all that happens in our life to make something beautiful. And you had such a transformational experience through that time alone, which is also often the case where God has to take us out and say, okay, here's some time, and now you have time to connect. Even Jesus had that wilderness time before he launched into his ministry. And I think that's so important. So thank you for sharing that example with us.
You're welcome. Yeah, God decided that it was necessary to put me on academic probation twice for me to have my wilderness time. So
yeah, God has God's ways, I tell you. Sometimes you're like, really? But no, it's amazing. It's really wonderful. Sherry, did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say how wonderful it has been to have these kids on campus. I love they're usually still there at the end of the day as I drive out, and I just love seeing them, and I love seeing this young adult leader who's with them. He just seems so caring and loving of them. And there's been times when we've had people come on campus, and that's looking for a pastor, and he comes and finds us and connects us. So yeah, that's really been wonderful. I do have a question, because I live about a mile from the downtown Y. We walk down there many times in the weekend, and so I'm just wondering, and I just know what affordable housing is getting like downtown, and I'm getting concerned about it. And I'm just thinking, oh, I so hope that y'all are living into some of that social responsibility about some affordable housing in that residential portion. Maybe all of it can't be, but I hope there's some commitment to that.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So when we set out so when we initiated the RFP, the request for proposals back in 2018, one of the qualifiers that we put in there for the developers as part of their submission was affordable housing, and what that they had to address that. Now, with that being said, every developer tries to get at it a slightly different way, and the city, from kind of the elected side of things, very much wants to see continued density in downtown, right? Because density is good. It's a new and different downtown than what it was 25 years ago, but gentrification is a very real thing. Affordable housing is a very real thing. And so there is a percentage that the developer has built into the residential piece that's listed for affordable housing. But quite candidly, we are also, as the Y, trying to broker additional conversations between the developer and the city and the county, for the city and the county to invest additional funds to offset the developer's costs for an increased percentage. So the reality, so this is probably too much inside baseball, but we are leasing the land to the developer. It's a long-term lease. So we maintain long-term ownership. It's a 99-year lease. We'll all be gone by the time it's done. And then there's kind of three pieces. There's the Y piece, and we're purchasing our piece outright. There is the office piece, and they'll sell that to somebody else because that's what developers do. And then there's a residential piece, and they'll sell that. So, you know, the developer, they've got margins they've got to hit, and they have been very generous with the Y. I mean, we got a very competitive offer from East West, and then we're doing a capital campaign for the balance of that. The YMCA piece of the project is about $25 million. And we're doing a $10 million capital campaign to offset what we need to raise, and we're about halfway there already. We just went public with a campaign as well. So the developer, they're in a tight spot because they don't have much wiggle room on their end. And the Y, we can't ultimately come in and say you have to do 10% more financial or affordable housing. But where we are best positioned, I think, as an organization, is to help facilitate and to help use our advocacy voice for leaning on city and county public-private partnerships to help with that. And that seems like a very optimistic and likely scenario as we move forward. But yeah, you know, and part of it, we've been very careful as we've been looking at the downtown project. The reality is, you come in and you build a bright, shiny building downtown, and all of a sudden people begin to think gentrification, and they think, well, you know, it's the Y is no longer for the community. And the reality is that's not the case. The reality is that the residents in Durham, the residents that are on our financial assistance, they deserve the bright, shiny building just as much as everybody else.
Right.
And so how we continue to make that affordable. I mean, the great thing is we will reopen this facility in 2 years without passing that cost on to our members, right? So we're fundraising, we're getting money from East West, we're doing all the things so that we can continue to maintain that same level of inclusivity. But we're keenly aware of the perception and the stories that get told, and we're trying to manage that. We've been trying to manage that for a couple of years now, and you know, there will always be a few things here or there that go awry, but affordable housing, as well as how the retail spaces are managed. You know, what below market rate retail, below market rate office, all of those pieces play into how the downtown community connects. But that's been very embedded into our process since day one.
I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, I know it's a difficult, but my husband's a city planner. I know. And I was involved a little bit with Durham Can in the building that was over next between First Pres and St. Philip's. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that at least it's part of the conversation and working hard with what advocacy you have, because I understand that you're not controlling everything, but
absolutely.
Thanks.
I just want to say thank you for doing this. This is like a dream. When we started to think about the fellowship hall, I just kept thinking, oh, it would just be wonderful to have something that gets a place for kids to be and to be enriched and given some beautiful time. So
well, and I appreciate you saying that. And you know, again, it's our honor, and we're very humbled to do it. You know, the pandemic. We felt like we were close to our community and close to our families before the pandemic. But we got closer than ever over the past 2 years. Many of you may remember that in the state of North Carolina, that Governor Cooper closed businesses in early March of 2020. And within 12 days, the Y had reopened as a provider of emergency childcare for essential workers. So but our facilities, as like an exercise facility, they were closed for 7 months. So in some ways, the Y was closed by law for an extended period of time, and that was pretty significant for us as an organization. But in many ways, we've been open through the entirety of the pandemic. And in the ways that we have been open, whether it's been through our scholastic support centers that we ran as virtual learning spots for students while schools were remote, whether it's been meal delivery programs that we've done in partnership with Durham Children's Initiative or other entities around the Triangle, or whether it's just been serving as that, again, the mental health of our community, of not just of children, but of adults, the isolation for seniors. So being able to connect with folks. So we truly have gotten very close to our community and close to our participants and members and staff through the past 2 years. And we're excited, again, to be entering this phase of things where we can be engaging with, again, I'm biased, but, wonderful organizations like Westminster to meet the needs of the families and the children. The reality is, like the kids are so far behind. I think 60% failed EOGs last year. I think many academic papers will be written in the decades to come about the long-term implications of the pandemic on today's children. And I know that we saw that firsthand in our own house, by the end of the year. And we're a relatively privileged family. We have 2 working parents that have some flexibility that could provide a safe, supportive online environment for our son. But the mental toll it took on him after a year was palpable. You could see it, you could feel it, and he certainly could feel it. And so as we work with students coming out of that, as we work with educators, as we work with families, we need partners to do that. And Westminster's been a tremendous partner in helping us bring this program to fruition. So it really is our honor, and we're so excited to be able to activate that space in what I believe is truly a meaningful way.
Do you think that it might be helpful, and maybe you've already got this plan, that at some point there be a program like another Aperture that explains what all the different volunteer positions are?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think we can do that. And whether it's another Aperture or, look, y'all know I like to make some barbecue. So when it's safe, again, I'll bring out the big grill and we can sit down and have a good lunch and talk about it. But I do think there'll be an opportunity to go in depth. I mean, with that program specifically, whether it's helping reading to students or being a mentor, like there's lots of different opportunities for that. Certainly as people get comfortable and things get safer to do so coming out of the pandemic, we'll be able to clarify and identify even more of those opportunities. But absolutely, we'd like to highlight those as we continue to move forward.
I liked your promotional videos that you had on there. Really well done.
Well, you all may know Mike Mayan, another Westminster member, serves on the diaconate. He is a member of our marketing and communications team. So I have nothing to do with those videos, but I will pass all kudos over to Mike and his team. So thank you for sharing that. And I'll make sure Mike gets that accolade.
I know I've referred to this as our country club is the Y, because we really have enjoyed it, especially during COVID. We went to Hope Valley almost daily, and it was so safe. All the places were wiped off. The lifeguards were so great. We really met people there every day that we didn't know before. And I really love the diversity in the Y, because I'm a minority usually in any class that I take. And I think it's great. I get to meet so many different people in so many different walks of life, and it's really fantastic. But I will miss the water aerobics for a while downtown. So I'm going to have to search out where else I can go. I know we can go to Cary and, in different places, but it has been a place for me to go for sure. And my husband as well, but we'll find another place, I'm sure.
Well, and we're working on solutions, and we, it doesn't get us through the full year, but we've got heaters at Hope Valley, so we can go later in the fall and earlier in the spring, and then Chapel Hill and Northwest Cary, and again, we're working with city and county officials to identify some additional interim spaces. But yeah, our water aerobics classes are really popular, and so we want to make sure we take care of y'all as we go through this. And that is one of the comments that we hear from a lot of our Durham members. Our members love the diversity of the Y. And there's people phrase it a lot of different ways, but we think of it as kind of like Durham's living room. It's the one place that you can go in Durham and truly see every dimension of diversity in the same space at the same time. And so we are absolutely committed to not only keeping that and maintaining that, but growing that as we continue to move forward.
I just feel like the church can learn a lot from the Y in terms of its clarity of mission and its inclusiveness. And I just found it to be a powerful testimony for what the organization is.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And at the same time, it would be misleading for me to say that it's always been that way, right? I think the Y, like every other organization, we wake up every day and we try to do a little bit better each and every day. It wasn't too long ago where we were still an all-male organization. And it wasn't too long ago where you didn't see that level of diversity in the Y. In many ways, actually, I'm very proud of the Durham Ys. Leading into the merger between Durham and Raleigh, it was actually the Durham Ys that changed the way we classified families to be more inclusive. We used to classify families as, if you were a family, you were classified as husband, wife, and dependent. As we prepared for the merger, the Durham Y actually shifted that to be adults with dependents. And I remember our CEO at one point saying, we have to get out of the business of defining families. Our business is supporting families, but we have to get out of the business of defining families. Now that in and of itself and in a religious setting can be a little controversial at times, but we decided we had to do that. And one of the things over the past several years, especially with some of the work around racial equity, LGBTQIA rights, things of that nature, one of the comments I hear over and over again from our leadership is what we have found is every time we open our doors wider, we get better. We used to have pretty narrow doors to get into the Y, and we continue to try to open them a little wider, and we still have more room to grow. We actually just hired a Chief Diversity and Equity Inclusion Officer about 6 months ago. She comes from an academic background, Dr. Lisa Scott, and she's doing phenomenal work for us. We have an entire DEI department now. We didn't have that 2 years ago. And so we've still got a lot of work to do, but I'm proud of the work we're doing today.
Yeah, phenomenal. Any other questions? Sherry, you've got one more.
I was just going to say what Faye said about meeting that diversity. I know my husband comes home and tells me stories in the locker room and the people he's gotten to know through the locker room. I mean, we talk about racial equity, showing up and just getting to know people at that level. It's just huge for that. It's been huge for him.
Well, yes, sweetie, I'm still upstairs. One thing, and I didn't get a chance to mention this earlier, but what I think you're talking about there, we like to say internally, you've got to get proximate to the situation, right? Like you can't support your neighbors if you're removed from them. So you have to get proximate to it to identify with it and to support the work. So an example of that, what we've done in Southeast Raleigh several years ago before the pandemic, we purchased, I think it's 39 acres. It's an old flea market space at the intersection of the Beltline and Rock Quarry Road. And we have served as the developer there. And some of you may be familiar with that project, but it's the Southeast Raleigh YMCA. And in addition to the Y, we partnered with Wake County Public Schools and we built a school. So it's a school and a Y combined. The school, they paid their 20-year lease up front. And then we've also partnered with DHA to build, I think it's 170 units of affordable housing on that site. And then there's also locally based retail and services for residents that again are born out of the community. And so, for us, it's again, if we take a step back and we look historically, the YMCA of the Triangle has been for a long time a predominantly white, predominantly middle and upper class organization. But decades ago, and a lot of this came through our annual campaign work, we began gaining clarity and focus on what it really meant to connect with and truly be of service with our neighbors. And how do we make that more welcoming and more inclusive? And I think the Southeast Raleigh project has been a great demonstration of kind of walking that walk. And, we're not just going to put Ys in rich, fancy suburban neighborhoods. We're going to go where families need us, and they don't just need us in the suburbs. We need to have a footprint and a presence everywhere. And excuse me. So that diversity is really important to us. And I'm glad that many of you see it. And at the same time, we acknowledge we still got work to do, but we feel we're pretty proud of the work we've done over the past several years to get to today.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and taking time away from your children to be able to do this. But it has been very enlightening and inspiring, and I really look forward to seeing more and more of those children on our campus. It has really been a joy to see them. I get to see them run out to the playground and swing around out there, and yes, I look forward to getting to know some of them if when the time is right. So why don't we close with prayer? I'm going to share my screen one more time, and let's see if this will allow me to. Yes, it will. So here is a Pilgrim's Evening Prayer. Can you all see that? Can only see Forrest, so I'm going to assume that you can see it unless, okay, good. And what we'll do for our closing, I wonder, Margaret, would you be willing to read this prayer while we just listen to you? And that way we can just settle in and close out the evening with this evening prayer written by Paul Lang, who was last month's speaker. Margaret, are you able to do that? Just need to unmute.
Yes, I am.
Great. Thanks, Margaret. Let's pray.
Let us pray. Lord, in love you come to me, full of truth and grace. Bid me come and follow you, walking in your way. With you at my right hand, Lord, I fear not though I fall. Here I am, your servant, Lord, answering your call. Take my dry and dusty heart, sprinkle it with grace. Let my heart awaken, God, enlightened by your face. Shape me by your presence, God, a vessel tried and true. Cast me in your image, Lord. Make me more like you. Amen.